$738 billion. That is the massive size of the Inflation Reduction Act. With it, the Biden administration in the United States wants to, among other things, boost the production of electric cars and batteries. Now, Brussels says those benefits for U.S. car makers put their European competitors at an unfair disadvantage.
U.S. President Joe Biden is on a last-minute campaign tour in heavily contested districts, trying to head off Democratic losses in Tuesday's midterm elections. He talks about the issue most on voters' minds, inflation.
We also know folks are still struggling with inflation. It's our #1 priority. That's why, with Mike's help and Scott's help, I signed the Inflation Reduction Act to bring down the cost of everyday things that we talk about around the kitchen table.
But the act is raising eyebrows in Europe and Asia because it includes a $7,500 tax credit for Americans who buy an electric or hybrid vehicle, but only when it rolls out of a North American factory with domestic batteries. It's no problem for Tesla, GM or Ford, but it's a big problem for manufacturers like Toyota, Hyundai and BMW. The German carmaker has 8 electric and hybrid models, but only the 2 it makes in North America qualify for the tax credit next year. Like cars made here in its Spartanburg, South Carolina plant, but not the ones it makes in Europe. It's America first at its worst, critics say.
The American Inflation Reduction Act is a matter of concern, not only for France and Germany, but also for all European countries. So we need to work on the adequate European responses to this American Inflation Reduction Act, which might jeopardize the level playing field between our 2 continents.
European officials threatened to take retaliatory measures against the United States on Monday, calling the subsidies contrary to World Trade Organization rules. To avoid a tit-for-tat trade war, Brussels and Washington have set up a task force to try to hammer out a solution.
For more on this, let's bring in DW correspondent Jack Parrock in Brussels and Simone Menne. She's the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Germany. Welcome to both of you. Simone, let me start with you. A massive subsidy program that might cause European manufacturers to lose out on a growing market. Now, your people should be up in arms.
Well, I would be not so alarmed because there are talks, and I think the act as such has a good purpose, but maybe there were some mistakes in how it was finally formulated. So correction would be necessary, but not now a war.
Jack, let me cross over you to Brussels. The French economy minister, Bruno Le Maire, says Europe's industrial future is at risk here. That does sound quite concerned. How worried are EU officials?
Yeah, they are pretty worried. We've actually got a meeting of ministers, finance ministers of the EU here in Brussels today, and we've had some pretty strong comments. Valdis Dombrovskis, who's the sort of European Commission's trade chief, he was talking about these as discriminatory provisions. Yesterday, we heard Christian Lindner, the German finance minister, talking about the potential for a trade war. The language is very, very strong around this issue. The Europeans are really, really worried about what this means. In the heat of the midterm elections, the Biden administration is very keen to show they're doing everything they can to try and reduce inflation. But that's also a concern for European ministers and European governments as well, who are seeing inflation skyrocket in the Eurozone and all across the European Union as well. So they're making quite strong statements at the moment, but what it looks like and what we've heard from the Treasury in the US, Janet Yellen pretty much saying that they're not going to change this, that the Inflation Reduction Act in the US is there to stay.
So leaders in Europe are concerned. Simone, back to you. What does this mean then for your German member companies that are doing business in the United States and hoping to prosper there in a growing market?
Of course, our German members want to prosper and be part of the transatlantic trade, and that is what the American Chamber of Commerce is for: transatlantic trade. So what we need is good agreements, that we have a mutual partnership, that we have a transatlantic sovereignty and not protectionism. On the other hand, I think the wording which the political leaders use at the moment are very, very strong, and it's not necessary. There is a trade and a Technic and Trade Council. There is the G20 summit. These are good locations to talk about and look for corrections, and not immediately talk about war or counteraction, because that would not help anybody. So not our members, not the US companies, and neither the US nor Germany.
So Simone, in brief terms, what are the mistakes that need to be corrected from your point of view?
Well, I think it's very important that we look at the protectionism, which is for batteries, for example, or also for hydrogen. You should think about BioNTech, Pfizer. So good cooperation between Europe and the US can prosper both. So don't close, and that is what the Inflation Reduction Act does, don't close out European innovation, don't close out European production. And on the other hand, we like to have US innovation, US technology here in Europe. It would be very bad for both sides if we now make a barrier between the two of us.
Simone Menne, head of the American Chamber of Commerce in Germany, and Jack Parrock, our correspondent in Brussels. Thanks to both of you.